Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rapid Fire in Day 3. My name is Tom Ffiske, and today we've got a great range of panelists who are all going to be answering questions as quickly as possible and hopefully as concisely as possible, but I will beep them out if they don't. So I think first off, we'll do some introductions. Ollie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Ollie Rankin. I'm the founder, CEO, and creative director at Pansensory Interactive, and I also technical director at Lost Horizon, making virtual reality and hybrid live music events. And I spend the rest of my time trying to save the world.
Nice, small brief. Amy, what are you up to?
Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of EndeavorVR, focused very much on XR at scale within the enterprise, and I'm very excited for this round.
Yes, so am I. It's always quite fun when we never do these. And finally, we got Ben.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Erwin, the creator of the Poly's WebXR Awards and WebXR Developers, or WebXR Summit series, which included the WebXR Developer Summit, the WebXR Business Summit, and the upcoming WebXR Design Summit on October 12th. And we will be back with the second Poly's WebXR Awards on February 12th. So I'm very happy to be here. Nice to be with you all.
Excellent. And my name is Tom Ffiske. I run a bi-weekly newsletter called the EndeavorVR to help you level up your knowledge in the immersive industry. And I think I know everyone in this call, so it's great to see you all today. So the format's quite simple. Each of you have about 60 seconds to answer the questions we're going to lay out to you. So you need to keep it short and tight, and I will be keeping timing on you. When you go over it, I'm going to do, and you know when to stop. Which sounds like, as people said yesterday, I'm about to do a speech for a wedding. I'm not. Basically, you just go through. The idea is to give some nice, concise answers, as opposed to rambling and getting people lost in a forest of words. We've got a range of topics, and we're going to start with the first one, which is the future. To gear or not to gear, is the future without headsets, and when and why? So, for example, could it be AR glasses, which could be a barrier or a friend to experience the world? We're going to go randomly for who starts first. I'm going to set up the timer now. And the first person who's going to go is Ben. You have a minute.
Hi. Okay. Well, to wear or not to wear, I think that headgear is inevitable. It's a matter of time. When we're probably about 5 or 6 years out, we're probably going to see the same iterative cycle where we saw the iPhone come out and everybody didn't need a smartphone immediately, but by the time the fourth released, everyone did. So that is going to inevitably change. There's a lot of science and physics that needs to be worked out in the meantime, and to make the form factor easy, to make it safe, to make it tethered, to make it secure. But when it happens, it's going to change the way that we have, because stereoscopy is as inevitable as stereo audio. And why would we go back to mono? Why would we go back to 2D? We're 3D beings in 3D space. Over to you.
Excellent. That's well under a minute. Well done. Amy, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely going to be an evolution, as Ben said, and the magic Wayfarers that just came out are really just outward-facing cameras with spatial audio, sort of a blend of what Bose frames did and Snap, and kind of mash those two concepts together. And then I think we'll start to see, true wearables, somewhere in the 5 to 6 year range. Mixed reality glasses are hard, very, very difficult from the optics standpoint and technical standpoint. But I tell you, when the implants are ready and the contacts are ready, I will put in the contacts, I will implant the chip, I will be first in line. I want to be able to just access all information anywhere, anytime. So I'm not afraid of that piece of the future.
Yes, we'll see what kind of things we need to inject in ourselves in the future. Ollie, you have a minute.
Yeah, I mean, like Amy said, I think it's inevitable that we go from computers being the size of the room and sort of, disconnected from each other, to computers that are the size of a desk, and then the internet connecting them all together, to computers that are the size that fit in our pockets. It's just an inevitable progression that they will become more seamlessly integrated into our experience of the world. But I think it's too early to guess exactly what the interface is going to be, whether it's a neural implant or contact lenses. But definitely the big clunky headsets at the moment are not the end game. That's just sort of a stepping stone that we're going to learn a lot from on our way to whatever becomes the seamless technology that everybody adopts.
I actually agree with you there. So I was actually thinking that non-invasive technologies, like such as non-invasive neural, will probably be the way to go. But the impression I have is with the research is at most it can like read whether you want to like accept or click or go forward. Like we're talking like really vague things at the moment. You're definitely not going to be able to type with your brain, basically. So I'm interested to see how the technology will progress. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that, just beyond it before we get to the next
I
round?
do. So Neuralink, what Elon Musk is working for, is fascinating, and I love the way he couches it as needing a bandwidth upgrade to our brain. I myself intend to pass on the invasive part of it. I'll go with the contact lenses, perhaps. But anything that goes under my skin, anything that would need to be surgically removed, I draw the line there.
Yeah, for myself, I agree. I also, don't want any surgery type stuff either. Although I've seen like in other countries, they put like their tube passes in their palms, so they can just slap it and they proceed forth. I thought that's quite cool.
I'll carry mine.
Yeah,
and we grew up on sort of cyberpunk fiction where people were slowly becoming cyborgs. I do think that is at some point in the future, maybe not in our generation, but at some point.
I'd argue it's already happened. We've already biocyborgs with all the vaccines which we have, as well as other things which heighten our immune system. Biologically, we're already much better we are now compared to generations ago.
Because Bill Gates really needed to implant a chip in us through the vaccines to be able to surveil us. That's why he did it.
Conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I'm just being remote controlled at the moment, actually. Yeah. Anyway. So what we're going to do now is, I reckon 60 seconds is a bit too generous. So I'm going to go down to 45. So you have 45 seconds for the next few rounds. All right. So we're going to talk about age. Is supervision required? Is there a minimum or maximum age for the introduction of VR AR to people, and also why? I mean, to consider the impact as well. What impact does it have to be with what are they that the kids know, or can a generation that didn't grow with XR develop for the generation that does? I think we're going to start with Amy.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic because there hasn't been enough studies on what the impact is. Certainly even physically on having light fields in eyes of kids who are very young. There's sort of arbitrary ages, some as young as 8, and then others up to about age 13. So I think from the biological standpoint, we really need to do more studies. The thing that is a little bit harder to quantify is the emotional impact, right? Because when a child sees something in VR, they actually register it as a memory. And so they may see a beautiful underwater experience, but they may also record that they know how to swim.
We're now going to go on to Ollie. You have 45 seconds.
Great. Yeah, well, I agree with Amy that we need to do more study of the physiological and psychological effects of XR on young people. But I think it's clear that the amount of time that children today are spending on their screens and devices is impacting their ability to function in the worlds that we grew up in. But it's actually at the same time enabling them to function better in the world that they're growing up in. So I think it would be wrong to not allow children, if it's proven to be safe, to use the technology that we all think is going to become a bigger and bigger part of their lives growing up.
I'm sorry, I've been muting myself. Yes, I was just saying I agree, but it also does feel like elder people just saying, "Oh, what the kids doing nowadays" as well. Ben, 45 seconds.
Well, we didn't get it right with Web 2.0, so why are we going to get it right with Web 3? As far as supervision is required, kids are going to do what they're going to do, and I don't think that any level of heavy-handed parenting is going to do that. I think that we need to have a broader social conversation, but I'm going to flip your script from supervision to supervision, which I think that one of the promises of this technology is to sort of give us bionic superpowers where if we want to magnify something or have macroscopic or microscopic vision or super hearing, all of those technologies are going to be one of the things that is going to be a big appeal for the future of computing.
I'm not entirely sure how that's related to children's supervision. Do you mind expanding that?
No, I said I flipped the script on you. It's supervision.
Right. Oh, right. Well, so you didn't answer the question. Cool. You're disqualified.
No, I did.
But
I only gave it
15. But more seriously, the perspective I have is research has shown that, I don't know, with children, it's a very under-researched area when it comes to virtual reality, which is why I'm more careful with putting children in VR headsets. And it really depends on the content because of VR headsets too. And because of the lack of research, I am slightly more careful about giving younger children the access to it. But does everyone else share the same thoughts on that?
I've actually done it. I've shared, I put my nephew's kids that are 5, 7, and 9 in VR, and they had a good old time. And one of the negatives that I saw was that they're very prone to the game aspect of it, where like if they lose, they don't feel good about it. But in terms of the experience, I thought it was a very healthy thing.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, if it's in short spurts, I suppose. Yeah. Cool. So we're now going to go to the next one, which is WebXR. I feel like Ben knows exactly what he's going to say about this. But when it comes to WebXR, is WebXR good enough to attract new users in XR, and why? So we are going to start with Ben, but because he didn't answer the first question at all, you now have 30 seconds. Good luck.
Is it good enough? Is it good enough yet? Because Web GPU is coming, and the experiences are going to be much higher poly and much higher quality and much more performant when they get here. But there are some growing pains. Apps are also going to be growing on the same arc. So native apps on both mobile and headset devices will grow in tandem and always exceed the capacity of that. But WebXR is here today, and it's ready.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Christopher.
Hi, Amy.
It's good to see Christopher is now here. Chris, do you mind introducing yourself briefly?
I'm Christopher Lafayette, International National Speaker, Emerging Technologies, advocate of community, huge passionate person when it comes just to centralizing people and looking at metaversal platforms as people first. Look, the bottom line, when we think about ecosystems aren't a set of hardware, software. Ecosystems are people. So if we're going to extend reality, then we must bring reality with it. It's so good to see everyone. Sorry for being a little bit late.
No worries at all. I think because you've come in slightly late, what we're going to do is you're going to go next. You have 45 seconds to explore WebXR, whether you think it's good or not. Go.
I do. I think it's wonderful. I think what we like about WebXR is accessibility. Look, let's be a little frank when we talk about consumerism. We still haven't dominated the market when it comes to XR adoption. And even people within our industry are still scratching our head on what exactly acronym speaking is XR. But moreover, when we start looking at the wider aspect of consumption for consumers, if you go up to the average person, to the layman, if you will, that's outside of our industry and say, hey, what's virtual reality? Don't you know most of them may still go and say, isn't it a 90s video game? So when we start thinking about key opportunities for entry of education, I think WebXR is right at the top of the hill. Accessibility, familiarity. There you go.
Great answer. We now go on to Amy, 45.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, we just need to expose more people to what XR is. And, to Christopher's point, they don't know what VR is. They don't know what AR, MR, XR. Like, it's just a big kind of mishmash to anybody outside the industry. And we need to get to people where they live. And we also need to understand, what do people want from XR? Like, how do we make their lives better? What is the utility? What are the interactions? And so we need more users, not just early adopters and not just gamers.
Excellent answer.
Boom, on time.
And yeah, you had 10 seconds. It was great. And finally, we go on to Ollie. Go for it.
Yeah, so I agree with what Christopher and Amy and Ben said about the accessibility aspect of WebXR, and the fact that people can use their phones and access augmented reality experiences without having to download an app is absolutely brilliant. But I think there should be a moratorium, even a ban on exposing people to VR in WebXR at the moment, because the performance is just so bad that it has the potential to turn a whole generation of people off VR all over again. So I think WebXR for VR should only be something that developers and researchers use until the baseline of the technology is performant enough to give people a good experience.
Can I argue that?
Go on. No, go on.
So as far as it not being ready, built a whole entire award show around immersive WebXR and actually went in there and shot those experiences, and they are performant enough. They are at a high enough frame rate, and the idea of banning
on your hardware, perhaps.
Well, on a Quest 2, or on a Quest 1 rather. The Quest 1 was out when I started this whole thing, and no question, WebXR in fully immersive headsets has been ready for a whole year.
So the perspective I have on it is like it's a more accessible way of seeing experiences. So I'm all in for it, but I also do agree with Ollie that before we have more people try it, let's make sure it's super duper good, and then get the content led forward as well. Amy and Chris, do you have any further thoughts before we proceed?
No, it's funny that you mentioned that about the poor experience. I think I stood up 3 years ago at South by Southwest, and the first thing out of my mouth was stop building bad VR. And it's up to the developers really, and making sure that you're optimizing your experience for whatever the medium happens to be. And it's not helping, kind of pushing experiences out there that are not good, that don't maintain frame rate, and that make people sick. So that I think is probably more the message than WebXR is not ready.
Yeah, which ties in with Ollie as well.
I'd piggyback on what Amy's saying. I concur wholeheartedly. And look, when it comes to WebXR, frankly, none of it's ready, but it's ready for the time now present. Technology, when you talk about XR isn't a single variable equation, it's a multivariable equation. That means we've only developed sight. In the scheme of things, when we talk about true XR, true fidelity, human factor, we've only developed sight really well. As it was just said, it's only been out for a year. A year according to when we start to look at astral and telepresence projection, there's a whole lot that we still have to work with as this industry, but it's good for the time now present.
It certainly is. We'll now move on to the workforce. We're exploring virtual economies. Are virtual economies with bidding opportunities like NFTs going to drain the global workforce in the physical world as we know it? So we're going to start off with Chris.
NFTs, non-fungible tokens. I think it's huge. I think it's a value add to ecosystems. Look, we become more remote in the past year, or more virtual in the past year and a half than we have the last 10. And the reality is that we now live in a remote and a hybrid workforce. If we think about the metaverse today, it's defined as virtual worlds. And the number one thing that's central and key to the actual metaversal platforms is ownership. So yeah, I think on the enterprise and the consumer level, NFTs are here to stay. They're very wild in their nature right now, but they're being verticalized in this industry. And it's going to be a huge, huge accomplice when it comes to what we do in our XR space for ownership.
I do agree with you, but I do disagree in certain parts. But next, we're going to go to Ben.
Okay, well, there's two parts to that. First of all, there's the NFT part and the workforce part of it. So, addressing those separately, the value of NFT is digital attribution. It's something that the digital ecosystem has needed a long time. What we see happening right now is a lot of hype and speculation, and we also have Ethereum gas fees, which I think are in the not even the long term, the short term, going to be a deal breaker for a lot of things. So, the ability to tokenize digital attribution is key, but it needs its costs brought down. And as far as how that relates to the workforce, and ownership and so forth, I missed that part of your question, how the two relate. But I think that NFT, yes, is here to stay, but not in the form we have it now.
Thank you. We now go on to Amy.
Yeah, so we're definitely in the midst of this volatile hype cycle around NFTs, but where I would personally like to see them evolve into is to have much more utility, where it's not just kind of creating this object of desire, but like there's a utility around it, and it actually is enhancing whatever our digital landscape looks like, and as it's relevant to. I don't see it draining the workforce now, but what I do see is it being really important middle step as we start to shift from traditional jobs into the jobs that are going to be created by Web 3.0 and the metaverse.
Wonderful answer. And we now finally go on to Ollie.
Yeah, well, this is a topic that I could speak ad nauseum, but I'm not a fan of crypto or NFTs in general, because I think it's just a more modern way of entrenching wealth inequality and taking money off poor people and giving it to the rich. But I do think that with automation, robotics, and algorithms, the traditional workforce is going to be depleted anyway. We've had decades of human labor being devalued by these processes of automation and robotics, and it's only a matter of time before it's more appealing for people to work in these sort of virtual spaces and selling virtual assets and etc.
Okay, so yeah, virtual economies. That was a really good round. And we seem to focus on NFTs, which will come up later, funny enough. We're going to be touching on NFTs. Briefly, before we do, we seem to have a split between people who love NFTs and people who don't like NFTs. I'm on the camp where, I think it's abhorrent that we trying to avert a climate disaster, yet we have an entire area called NFTs where we pay hundreds of dollars in gas fees just to offset the exchange rates of that. Does anyone disagree with me on it?
I fundamentally disagree. I think when you start to look at proof of work versus proof of stake, the industry itself is ironing itself out. Look, on the very computers that we sit here and talk to each other, at one time they were also jacking up the industry. When you start to look at the climate, and they have to start at a beginning cycle. Yes, there is a hype cycle, but it goes into the plateau of creativity onto the slope of enlightenment. So when we start thinking about its growth, it has to go through this natural refinement of technical growth, as all technologies do, including XR. So when we start talking about hazardous proof of work, proof of stake, Cardano, different blockchains, they're doing a great job in making those adjustments, including Ethereum on the way.
That's a great response, because you're correct that it's an iterative process. We'll improve over time. But I am saying currently, I just don't like to support.
I agree. Currently, it's not really that fun in that regard.
Does anyone else want to touch on the workforce and virtual economies before we continue?
Well, I would just say one thing about automation taking people's jobs. If your job can be done by a robot, you're in the wrong job. And to me, it's allowing us the opportunity to kind of free us up to do what we're here to do, which we have the ability to create things from nothing. Right? We have this ability of to bring together disparate thought, and if we focus that actually brings us more back to humanity than doing these jobs where it's just a rote activity.
I think that's a very privileged position, Amy. I think there's a lot of people who have no choice but to work 3 jobs to try and put food on the table for their family, and those people don't have the privilege of the education that we've had access to, or the opportunities that we have access to create art, or to do science, or to do things that cannot be automated. And I think we need to make fundamental changes in our society to give everybody those opportunities before we can be in a position to say that that's the future.
I will say this, that I think that what Amy said as a defense, and Ollie, I can totally I appreciate your lens perspective, but in a lot of ways, I do believe that Amy is right. If you are working a job that can be taken over by automation or robots, you're in the wrong job. The reality is that we need to have more ways of being able to create better training to be able to migrate different audiences to jobs that are more safe and secure. So technically, you're in the wrong job, not necessarily intention by choice, but by the circumstances that they may find themselves in.
The problem I have with that is in current free market capitalism, that those transferring kind of roles don't tend to happen every once in a while. So that does mean a little bit of intervention just to make sure the transfers could happen.
Opportunities abound in the fourth industrial revolution set of technologies, and where we're going with this, of course, certain jobs are going to be phased out and be automated. But the fact is that we as a society have to do a better job of educating people about what those opportunities and give them equity and opportunity to be able to pursue them so that they can transition out of them. And then just as many jobs over the eons have been left behind, these can be too.
Here to what Ben said and to Ollie's empathy.
And just moving from universal basic income to universal basic opportunity, where there's a safety net that we need to create, that we need to distribute the wealth, but then we also need to give people more opportunity to be able to educate themselves and upskill, or take a kind of a left turn in their careers. And it's not going to be easy, but we all need to kind of galvanize around this digital landscape.
Yeah, and I think YouTube currently.
I don't want to interrupt to say this will be the last point, because we do need to go through some other questions.
For sure.
Okay.
I think YouTube is currently acting as the free university for the world, and I think XR has the potential to stand up and do an even better job of teaching the whole world to do whatever it is that they might want to be able to do.
And I think we're all in agreement on that. We're going to go to quickfire round, where each of you have 30 seconds. So good luck. And the round is called Make My World. If you can live in one artist's world in VR, who would it be? And the first person to answer is Amy.
I met a woman called Monica Bielskite. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She has a company called Protopia Futures. And I love her work because she looks at science and she looks at technology, but then she just throws that all away and builds these incredible worlds of the future. So if there's anywhere I'd like to live, I want to live in one of her worlds.
Really interesting. We'll now go on to Ollie.
I think I would go with the world of Charlie Kaufman, the screenwriter. I'm not a big fan of the movies that he's directed, but the screenplays that he's written are absolutely brilliant portraits of the human condition. And I think, that rather than living in the world of a visual artist, I would like to live in a world where I could immerse and learn more about myself and other people through human interaction and experience and storytelling.
Nice. Ben, where would you live in?
Well, if we're talking pop culture, I would go with the Orville. And Seth MacFarlane made a great quote about, I'm just so tired of dystopian science fiction. And so what he did was he made a funny Star Trek set in a future where we got it right. And that's kind of where I think would be a point. But in terms of where we are in VR, I go to a lot of different worlds and I know a lot of different artists. We're having artists at the design summit, such as Artsy Marie, who does these amazing worlds of her own, Christy Fennison and Paws, amazing work.
Okay. Please make sure you're on time, please. And now we go on to Chris.
Frida Kahlo. She's one of the most inspiring artists that I've ever known. I've seen her work. Her work it inspires you to want to work. It inspires you of intrigue. By far and large, Frida Kahlo.
Nice. And this is actually quite privileged in that I've never heard of any of these artists before. That's great. Yeah.
Great Selma Hayek movie on Frida Kahlo. Check that out.
Oh, yeah.
I'll make a note of that. Yeah. Do you mind repeating that, actually?
Selma Hayek. It's called Frida.
Frida. I'll take a look at that. Thank you. We now go on to social good. if we're going to be exploring activism. Will there be a multi-world activism? When and how and why will activism move into the multiverse/metaverse, whatever you want to call it? We're going to start with Ollie.
It better start ASAP, because we still, obviously, as Greta Thunberg keeps on pointing out to us, we're still not doing enough about the climate crisis. And if we don't make some really serious fundamental systemic changes in the next couple of years, we are doomed as a species to maybe live out the last of our dying years in underground bunkers in VR. So yeah, I think we better start activizing now.
For worse, I completely agree. Amy, you're next.
Oh, am I up? I just hopped on screen. So agreed. It has to happen, and I would like to see this next value system. We talked about NFTs, but I'd like to see a value system that takes into consideration not the traditional economic construct of these sort of arbitrary markets that used to be tied to commodities, but that actually we can kind of tokenize essentially our data, our activism, the things that we do well. We have to be careful about it. We don't want to get into what China is doing with their sort of social scores, but I think there's an opportunity for us.
We now go on to Ben.
Activism begins where civics fails, and so what I think we need to do is to rewrite the rules and the underlying ways that the sausage gets made with policy making. The things that people feel that they need to be active about are things that we are addressing as a society, and we can use all of this new metaverse technology to do it in new, innovative ways.
I completely agree. I do see it as a civic failure sometimes as well.
Hey, Tom, your mic is very low.
It's a little hard to hear you now.
How about now?
Still quiet.
That's really interesting. Good to know. Just give me 2 seconds to sort.
We can hear you, though.
Can hear you. It's very soft.
That's really weird.
You have 30 seconds to fix it.
Meanwhile, we'll listen to Christopher.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? I think that's deserved. All right, 30 seconds. Let's go.
By way of hyperextension of acceleration of communication and expression, sure, certainly. I think it's going to have a different manifestation in XR spaces when we start talking about the subject itself in form of ideation.
There you go. How do I sound now?
Much better.
Clear.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for the few seconds I've had. So what we're going to do now is let's have a quick discussion on the social activism side. Sounds like we're all quite passionate about it. And I like Ollie's dystopian views. Yeah, you know what? We kind of need to. I think Greta's right. And I'm in agreement too. The next round is, this is going to be a fun one based on our conversation earlier, NFTs and capitalism. So we're going to be exploring, friend or foe, can we outgrow everything from being profit-focused, and will it ruin creativity, and why? Ben, you first.
Two things. You have blockchain, which is the underlying technology, which is something that we need. Yes, we're moving out of proof of work to proof of stake, and that's key. And this is a underlying fundamental part of the fourth industrial revolution stack, and we are actively giving a transfusion to it. What we have right now is an ongoing and second iteration of a very big Ponzi scheme where the whales come along and eat the plankton, and you see a lot of people trying to profit off of it, and they do. And until we get this gas fees and make NFTs economical.
We are now going to go to Ollie.
You're quiet again there, Tom. So I'm going to come out with a very blunt statement. I think if you're an artist, or if you're making art to get rich, you're not an artist. I think it's a fundamental mistake to try and make art for capitalist gain. And I think that NFTs are just entrenching existing inequalities. I think that if you think that artists need to be rewarded in order to create, Damn, I had so much good stuff to say here.
Don't worry, we will touch on it. We will touch on it. How's volume now? It's different, but like
it's medium now.
It keeps on dropping out whenever you come back after one of us speaking. It seems to drop down.
That's super interesting. I do apologize for that. Let's now go on to Chris. Go for it.
So let's be clear about art. And I categorically disagree with the statements, but I do have a good regard for them. Art, you can't have technology without art, but you can't have art without technology. So on the idea of building out a platform based on art and wanting to capitalize in the scale, get rid of every single platform that's ever been funded that you operate and use, because the beginning foundation of that is art. So art exposure for artists, and to be able to have another medium in which they can accelerate their work for greater discovery in a world where things are in an open sea but lost in sea. I'm an advocate of that as an artist, to be able to have my work discovered by what I do for others that want to consume.
I really like that, and I agree. Thank you so much. And we're going to go to Amy.
Well, I would say that NFTs are in the unruly toddler stage of their existence, and then they're going to go through an ugly, nasty teenage stage before they become full-fledged adults. And it is going to be an evolution. I would say that, relative to just economies, we need to build the interface to control our data and to manage our own data, and to start having one-to-one contracts around everything we do around commerce, and then that will be this new value system that I talked a little bit about earlier.
That's a wonderful response. Thank you. What we're going to do is, you're all in time, so congratulations. Well done. And what I'll do I'll do it slightly away from the mic, so maybe they'll fix the issue. But for now, Ollie, you had a lot more to say. Go for it.
Yeah, I'd like to quickly respond to what Christopher said, because I think that NFTs are exactly the opposite of giving artists a new avenue of discovery, except for this moment in the hype cycle. NFTs are a way of artificially creating scarcity out of a digital art piece that is by definition more discoverable until you turn it into an NFT. And then it becomes something that only one person can own, which I think is fundamentally at odds with the purpose of art in society.
And if I could add to what Amy said, first of all, Amy, you hit that out of the park. That was spot on. But the self-sovereign identity piece of it is very important. And what Ollie was just saying in terms of the way that, it's the attribution component of it. It's not so much the false scarcity. The attribution, you can copy and paste a digital NFT file and email it to somebody. It doesn't stop you from doing that. It just gives you a watermark that says that this is yours.
Nice. And for what it's worth, yeah, I do agree on all.
Can I reply to that real quick, Tom? Just
yeah, of
10
course.
seconds. I think I don't disagree with that, Ollie, on one sort of the ecosystem. But remember that when we build a technology, we do build indeed in an ecosystem, and we tend to think in verticals, but we have to think horizontally on the whole scheme of things. I think on a amorphous scale, what NFTs under a different manifestation, if you will, further down the road, will lend to the idea of artist security when it comes to their assets, whether that is on a blockchain or future forward on what is it for ownership and greater discoverability, what is it to eliminate the middlemen that have been sucking the money, sucking the resources and the funds from artists. If I'm an artist and I'm putting something in the market, I get a small margin and the rest goes to the bureaucratic fat cats. So how do we eliminate that? So on one hand, I appreciate what you said in the vertical, but horizontally, 40,000 feet up, I'm looking at it much more broader.
I actually disagree with that. You need to have some sort of middlemen like auctions and marketplaces in order for the art to be sold to begin with. So you will always have some sort of middlemen, and that is important to do. And I want to point out also that with auction houses like Christie's and Sotheby's, their profits are actually quite low. So they're not actually taking as much as you think in a wider market context.
That's a single variable equation. It's a multi-variable equation. There are many artists that have reached wild success, $2.5 billion plus industry so far 2021 by eliminating that middleman. So on one hand, I do agree with you, Tom, but it's much more broader than that specific vertical also, humbly.
Cool. We'll now go on to sustainability. So can we save the world? Can we successfully use technology to become sustainable? With a side note on the reality of planned obsolescence for profit versus carbon neutrality for accessing anything from anywhere. So let's talk about sustainability. Let's start with Chris.
Yes and no, because if the money that's allocated to resources, whether Jeff Bezos said, here's $10 billion in the funds, my question is oversight and where does the deal flow actually go? Where does that capital investment been going for all the different money? And with the politicians that we have, I have no vote of confidence for the politicians to do right with the resources, whether that's the Paris Climate Accords or new or any. I'd rather have Greta Thunberg in charge of the whole budget. If you tell me that Greta's in charge of it, I give a vote of confidence to say yes. If you don't, it's suspect all the way.
Yes, for what's worth. We now go on to Amy.
Well, I was thinking about using our technology to actually model out some of these problems and to kind of leverage technology to actually light the path and then make that path accessible, make that data accessible to a broader swath of people so that we can apply pressure where it's needed, and that we need visibility into, to Christopher's point, where are these funds going? Look at me at 20 seconds.
Sorry, that was 29, so you're absolutely fine on that.
Oh, wow, perfect.
9 seconds of silence.
Yeah, definitely gave it to you. Ollie, what's your answer?
I think we're going to have to invent our way out of this mess, but we need to think of it not just in terms of developing technologies to clean up the mess we've made, but we also need to be obviously switching to greener energy sources, more efficient technology, and also not just adding bells and whistles to things because we can. I think we have this bigger, better, faster, more mentality where we just keep on, oh, I can make this animated. Oh, I can make this lighter. I can make this HDR. We keep on adding things to draw more energy.
Okay, so we are out of time, and now we're going to go on to Ben.
We need to eliminate waste. We have these entrenched business models that are completely wasting everything from natural resources to the resources that we use. Take the cartons that we buy food in, take the fossil fuel industry, take disposable batteries. All of these things can go away because we have better technologies, we have renewable resources, and we have sterilization procedures that we could just cut out. That's the middleman we need to cut out in industrial waste.
And we are now out of time. So on sustainability, I think we've got a lot of differing views on this, but we're all in agreement we need to do better. That's the impression I have. Does everyone agree?
Yes.
Yes. It's a bit of a process, isn't it? So finally, for the quickfire round, we're going to self-image. Mirror, mirror, how can we view ourselves and others in the mirror world? Does this change the idea of self-identity, and can we design for it? And I feel like Ben should go first.
Well, let me take out do a selfie with a duck lip on it and talk about self-identity. I think that the culture that we're growing into here, that we've seen in Web 2.0, needs to evolve into the metaverse and Web 3.0 in such a way that has a sort of healthy self-image to people where when we are now avatars, and we can sort of change the way we look, the way we close, that's going to add an interesting dimension to self-image.
Yes, so we can now go on to Chris.
Yeah, I agree. Right now I'm advising a major medical practice and looking at how we're able to use the mirror and AR in the patient's eyesight, whether that's vaginal reconstruction surgery or whether that's dealing with burning scans of the body and skin grafting, for them to have a better sense of what it is that will look post or pre-op to post-op. So I think it's huge on a number of different levels, but I'm looking at it from a medical sphere.
Ollie, what are your views?
Yeah, I think both from a medical sort of therapeutic standpoint and from a social sort of aspect, people who suffer gender dysphoria or body dysmorphia will have the ability to present themselves as they see themselves in their head, and I think that is a great thing that will allow a lot more people to fully participate in society.
Wonderful answer. And finally, we're going to go to Amy.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to be able to kind of present the aspirational version of ourselves, but unlike social media today, to actually bring that out and positively impact our lives and also for others to be able to see us without unconscious bias, and sort of with that understanding that this is an avatar that I'm dealing with, so they're not coming at it by looking at someone's skin or making an assumption about someone just based on their appearance. So I think that there's an opportunity for us to all take a step closer together.
Yes. And I think the self-image thing is super fascinating because there's so many parallels to World of Warcraft and those kind of online communities where you have a different kind of self-image when online as well. Did any of you experience something like that as well with online communities? Or have you never done anything like that before?
I spend quite a bit of time in Sanzar at virtual concerts that we put on, and yeah, the way that people are able to present themselves and the sort of the creativity that comes through, and the way that you're able to project a person that you know's personality onto an avatar, no matter how lazy they were in customizing it, never ceases to amaze me.
I think the opportunity there is in the coming interoperability. Right? You know, right now we have Ready Player Me that works on a lot of different platforms, but our ability to be able to take one avatar and move across platforms and represent ourselves instead of have to pick and choose from what's available on a particular avatar is going to really make the whole self-expression part very interesting.
I think when we look at Mirror 2, we have to go beyond the avatar and go beneath the surface to manifest the attributes of a person and the characteristics, as opposed to just an avatar representing me as a black figure. A white person could get in the virtual world and take over a black avatar, and all of a sudden you assume that they're black. My point is, the characteristics, we have to do a better, I think, job of actually bringing that out as to the actual person themselves.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area, and it's one I've just always been personally curious about as well. Final round, we're going to talk about putting your money where your mouth is. So where would you put your money behind? Could it be NFTs, holograms, AR, VR, web, location-based? If you had a big chunk of money, where's it going to go? And the first person to answer is Amy.
I'd actually start in emerging markets, and I already have started in emerging markets, because I think we need to, kind of build, better ecosystems, better technologies, and better opportunities in markets, outside of the U.S. and certainly outside of Silicon Valley. Personally, I work with a lot of, female founders, so I'm passionate about helping female founders. But I think we need to spread the wealth a little bit and move outside of Silicon Valley in the U.S.
I completely agree. Chris, what do you think?
I'm already putting my money where my mouth is, and just wholeheartedly through mentorship. I think guidance and education and the passing of the baton, no matter the color, no matter the gender, I think we have to do a better job of actually mentoring our generations and actually get them. Look, we come out with the word metaverse and our whole industry is split. We have to do a better job if we can't get it right within our own industry, how can we get it right outside of our industry? Education, to me, is the biggest at the top of this board.
I really like that. Ben, what are your thoughts?
I would go with commercial space. I think that space programs have been the impetus for some of the greatest inventions humans have ever come up with, and that we need a lot of things to be invented. We need radiation shielding. We need better propulsion systems. We need better ways to send rockets into space. And this could be a galvanizing force that brings humanity together and transcends the military-industrial complex.
And finally, we come to Ollie.
I mean, to me, it all has to come back to saving the planet and saving our species, because all of these other things that we're talking about are going to be for nothing if we are banging rocks and sticks together to try and feed ourselves in the dying embers of our civilization. But I think, education is a huge thing, and bringing more people into the conversation. Part of the reason that we got into this situation is because we've let old white men make all the decisions for so long.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it was an excellent point which I wholeheartedly agree with.
Let it be noted that Ollie started talking about old white men and I didn't, so just know I did not bring the smoke at the time. I did not bring the smoke on that.
Yeah, let it be known. But for what's worth, I completely agree. So that was the final round. Let's do a little cap off from everyone. Let's go down from this order. Ollie, what's your final thoughts as well as a send off?
I loved what a couple of people brought up today about having an optimistic story to tell to people, and I think we as an industry, we owe it to ourselves and future generations to be trailblazing. We're a young industry, so we don't have the legacy of bias as much as other industries do, and we have this medium for telling stories and for changing people's minds that has never before been available. So I have a lot of hope, but I think a lot more of us need to be focused on trying to save the world.
Ben, for sign off as well as who you are.
I'm in this because I think that this technology, this medium, is one of the greatest that humanity's ever come in with, and it's an evolution of all the other mediums that came before it. And so a lot of these rules aren't written yet, and we have a responsibility to help get it right. There's a lot of work to do on that, and one of the things that I love about the XR industry is the sort of like-mindedness of people about doing the right thing and using this technology for good.
Chris?
I really like the candid nature of this discussion, this venue, this platform, and I'm taking notes even from opposing views that I hope that I can open up from my lens of perspective and their lens perspective, and to expressly to Ben's point, we have different views, but we all have commonality of wanting to make things better for everyone.
Amy, what's the final word?
Two things, that's why I love the term protopian. I think there's just no reason to have a fundamental belief system around dystopia and doom and gloom, and that AI is going to eat the world. We don't need to believe in that. We have a choice, and we all need to be involved. Stop pontificating about what the world's going to look like and roll up your sleeves and get in. And because the metaverse is for everyone, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. And let's go.
But I thought AI was going to eat the world.
It might, but we're in control of it today. We won't be for long. So stop complaining on Nextdoor and learn some AI. Learn how to code.
Learn how to code.
I had to take a shot at Nextdoor.
Be a maker.
Ooh, out at Nextdoor. I'm going to go say that to my Nextdoor community. Listen to Amy.
Yeah. Stop whining about people cutting in line. It's just, you're wasting your time and everyone else's. Be bigger. Be bolder.
Yeah. Stop.
Thank you, Tom. Tom, you have to give Tom, you have to give one.
Give one what?
Your send-off.
Your closing.
Oh, yes. Of course, yes. So thank you to everyone for joining. It was super fun. To all the viewers, this has been a great panel, and I'm sure they'll come again. You're going to see Amy in 2 seconds because she's doing the next thing.
Maybe like 5 minutes because I need to go get some more coffee, but yeah.
Yeah. Let Amy get her coffee, and then you get to hear from her. But otherwise, my name's been Tom Ffiske. I am the editor of the Immersive Wire, which is a newsletter. And if you want to follow me, you Google Immersive Wire. And it's been a great time for this thing. And I believe we have one last session for the VR and AR Global Summit. I hope everyone here has been enjoying it, and take care. And have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.